everyone. Welcome to All In on Real Estate. I'm your host, Aaron Goins. When I was in the military, no one in my circles talked about real estate. A lot of times we talked about debt, TSP, which is called Direct Savings Plan, and other financial things, but nobody talked about real estate. So I want to start a meetup where people can learn about real estate and build generational wealth for them and their families. So I'm very, very excited for our guest speaker today. Somebody I very admire. As if anybody knows me, I listen to three main podcasts. I listen to Secret Steps podcast, which is a motivational one. I listen to my coach John Casman's his podcast. I love it. And this host in his podcast, the Capital Raiser Show, with my main man Ruben. What's up, Ruben? How you doing, man?
Dude, I'm excited to be here, man. Honored, stoked. It's a pleasure to be here, man. So hopefully I can add some value to your audience and kind of hang out, meet some people and talk about my story and talk about raising capital, which is my favorite subject on the planet. Maybe snowboarding is a little bit higher, but it's pretty close.
What about your dogs too? What about your dogs?
They're right here.
Yeah, so, no, I'm saying, no, you said favorite things in the world. I know you had the dogs right there too.
I got the German Shepherds. Let me see if I'll point out some of them. So I got one over there in the corner. But I love my dogs. They're the best.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome, man. So let's get started, man. So tell us, how did you get into real estate?
So let's see. I started my dad was a real estate investor, and I kind of understood that I wanted to be like him. But he passed when I was really young. So later in life, I was like, well, how do I get into real estate and become an investor like my dad was? And I didn't know how I was going to do it. So I got into mortgages. And then that just taught me finance and how to sell loans, which was not going to help me at all. But in this process, I came across a group that was teaching single family real estate. And then one of their classes was on multifamily, and a guy named Johnny Dessar. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him, Johnny D. He is the man. Check him out. But he talked to me about like cap rates and why this was more powerful for creating generational wealth versus, one-off single family deals. So I started kind of trying to figure out how am I going to get into this multifamily game. And I started a meetup just like you, Aaron. So in this meetup, it was a physical meetup, and somebody came in from out of town with a bankruptcy. And I was like, what are you doing? And he was buying a fourplex like every other week. How are you buying these? And he explained to me that he had a bankruptcy. So I knew, because I was coming from the world of financing, that he wasn't financing these deals. How are you getting these deals done? He said, hey, I'm raising capital. Okay, so let me walk around with you and take a video camera to your projects. We can talk about wealth creation and fourplexes. And this was during the fire sale of the 2009 crash or 2008 crash, depending on where you are in the country. And from me posting these videos on YouTube, I raised like 600,000. It wasn't immediate. I had to court these investors, fly them into town, hang out with them, let them touch the physical assets that we were buying. But over a period of about 9 months to a year, I raised like 600,000 for small multis. And then he and I eventually separated. And I was like, what do I do? I need some money. So I ended up selling off my assets, which was a huge mistake. But later on down the road, a few years later, I was trying to get back into real estate, and all I knew was fourplexes. So somebody explained to me that if I wanted to buy a bunch of fourplexes, I might as well just buy them all simultaneously in a syndication. I was like, what is that word? I don't understand that. I've never heard of that. You're telling me that like I shouldn't do this by myself? Like I don't want to work with partners. I hate partners. I had a really nasty breakup with my last one. And they're like, well, if you team up with people, some guys can focus on capital raising, some guys can focus on acquisitions, and then the entire team together can do magical things and create a lot of generational wealth for their investors. So I'm like, oh, I need to find out about this. So I found a mom and pop syndicator here locally in Phoenix, Arizona, which is where I'm from. They were a little bit outdated in their capital raising strategies, but they had raised $50 million worth of, the way that they were acquiring their money was traditionally from hard money loans and one-off investor syndications. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a one-person syndication, but that was their specialty. Eventually, they ran out of money, and we found ourselves stuck. So how do we raise money? We had deals under contract. What are we going to do? They're like, Ruben, we hired you to raise capital. Where's the capital? Boom, boom, boom. bring it, like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I have no idea, man. I can't raise capital from people if they're not in my database. I can't raise money from people that I haven't spoke to yesterday about an in syndication that I'm doing today. But I came up with a solution, which is very typical and common in our multifamily industry, which is to bring a co-GP into your deal. So I brought a couple co-GPs, raised $1 million. We had to give them a piece of our company, which meant less in the pocket for me, but I was like, I don't care. I'm not interested in how much money I can make. I'm interested in how much momentum and how much traction I can build along the way. Brought $1 million. We took down a 90 unit down in Tucson, and then a 100-unit hotel that we were converting into a 62-unit heavy lift, essentially multifamily workforce housing project in a secondary market. And so I want to start talking about some of the missteps that I was finding with this company, because we were having a hard time working with limited partners because we had no database. So what we had to do was create branding, rebranding, marketing, infrastructure, communication. Some of our investors at that point in time were like, hey, man, I invested $50,000 or $100,000 with you. Like, I haven't heard from you in 4 or 5 months. What's going on? And we would eventually give them back a bunch of money, their money plus a bunch of money, but their investor experience was very poor because they weren't being communicated with. So in this process of coming on board with this old company, I started my show because I read Joe Fairless's book. I don't know if you guys have ever checked it out. It's called Best Ever Apartment Syndication Book. Great book. Yep. And I went right in there to like whatever chapter it was that was about raising capital, and said, start your own thought leadership, what is it called? Interview-based thought leadership platform.
That's what
I was like, okay. Yeah. So what that means, I was like, I've already done that. I had my YouTube channel back in the day. It worked great. That's probably outdated now. So what's in fashion now? Podcast. I'll start a podcast. And I started a podcast about raising capital. And then I met all these capital raisers who were very good at what they were doing. And I met all these sponsors that were telling me, this is how I raise capital for my deal. And I started contemplating, how do I put these guys together? I have access to these new guys that I had no idea that I would really have access to. I was just trying to learn when I started this. But the lawyers that I was interviewing on my show kept on saying the same thing. Hey, if you want to put these capital raisers and these syndicators together and make money, there's only one legal way to do it, and that is to start your own fund. So I got really crazy about starting funds, interviewed a bunch of fund managers, lawyers, business architecture, what they call fund architecture consultants, people that give advice to people before they start their fund and let them know how to put the money together, how to pay their investors, and that kind of thing. And what they always told me was, like, a lot of people will go to an attorney wanting to create a syndication, or I should say a security, which is exactly what a syndication is. But what the lawyer won't give them is business advice. So if they want docs and a security, a lawyer can do that, but they're not going to tell you, hey, they're not going to analyze your business plan and check your marketing and your implementation of skill sets to see if you can even raise the capital. They're just going to put docs together for you. And then, I think a lot of people that I talk to, they're just like, oh, I don't know where I'm going to get the money for these deals from. So I'll just start a fund and then the money will just be there. And they don't understand that they have to have all this marketing and structure in place and communication before they start their fund. But if you don't have that, the lawyer will create the docs for you anyways. So these fund architecture consultants will kind of break down where you are at in life, in your business, and then give you advice on how to pay your investors and how to set up the whole thing. And then, so I was like, I'm out of here. I'm going to go launch my own fund. But I was terrified as hell because I was getting a salary and I was helping somebody and I felt like I was being of contribution. And now I was going to have to do this all by myself, create my own website, create my own infrastructure, my communications, my automations, my CRM, the website and everything else, and the branding and marketing. It started to get overwhelming, not to mention I was going to have to go find a sponsor, select a syndication attorney, and then pay for the documents, pay for the website, pay for everything. And it was just going to be too much. So fortunately, I happened upon this one dude, which Aaron, his name's Andy McMullen. He's a big networker. He's already raised like $20 million. He started like 4 or 5 funds already. And he's like, hey man, I'm great at raising capital. What I don't have in my system is somebody that's good at marketing, somebody that's good at national exposure. He knew that I was a student of Andy Dickerson and that I had access to automations and branding and other kinds of things that I was going to do to help, build my own business. And he's just like, well, instead of building your own business and starting your own fund, which is going to cost you like $15,000, why don't you just come partner with me? I've already started a bunch of funds. We can use your marketing and my ability to raise capital and then get the exposure. And then we can help a bunch of people create generational wealth in multifamily. So I was like, well, hell yeah, man, sign me up for that. So a few months later, this is where I find myself, and our business structure is kind of divided into two places where we invest into our own build to rent projects in Louisiana, and we're owner operators on that. And then the other thing that we do is we raise capital through funds typically, or co-GP structures, and then raise money for syndicators or sponsors that we know, like, and trust, that we've done business with in the past. So I don't know if you have any questions, man, but this is where I found myself today. It's a lot of fun. It's crazy how fast it can happen, because like a couple of years ago, man, all I knew was fourplexes and I had a 0 unit portfolio. And now, we're building 98 units and we're trying to take down this 670 unit portfolio of 5 properties in 2 different states, North Carolina and Kentucky. And I can talk about these because they're 506C. So I don't know how familiar you guys are with regulations, but you can't advertise or even condition the market per se on projects unless you have approval and have filed for an exemption through securities law, typically regulation D, sometimes regulation A, or regulation crowdfunding. But, in 506C, we're allowed to talk about stuff, and that's kind of where I'm at. So now we're doing a couple of things. We're investing in other people's deals, and then we're investing in our own deals.
Okay. All right. I got 3 questions.
Yeah, rock and roll.
Before I open up for attendees. So number 1 is, what have you learned the most from having your popular podcast?
So when I started it, all I knew was raising from joint venture capital for small multis. And essentially what we would do is we'd find somebody, we'd partner with them, we'd make them an owner operator, give them half of our company or 35% or some portion of our company. And then we'd buy the fourplex with their cash. And this is similar to the way single family fix and flip investors raise money too. And then when I moved into the world of syndication, I started understanding, because I interviewed a bunch of people, how to effectively communicate with your investors and how important that is in order to scale your limited partner database and get them to have an investor experience. So I went from joint venture capital to learning about LP capital to needing to raise money real quick without the time to build out a limited partner database, and then learned how to raise from co-GPs, put them into your company, make them owner operators or officers of your company. And then from there, I think what I learned, along the way, from the very beginning to now, I realized that there's a lot more ways to raise capital than from joint venture money. And there are a lot more ways to raise money than just from limited partners. I started finding out about family offices and institutions and broker dealers and private equity. And, when does it make sense to work with these guys? So I think the biggest thing that I realized that there's a lot of ways to raise capital that doesn't involve limited partners or joint ventures. Like you can raise within a fund. You can start your own fund before you've ever raised for anything, like Hunter Thompson. His very first capital raise was in a fund. So I think that's been the biggest learning experience for me, is just the awakening and understanding that average dudes that you just went to high school with are capable of starting funds. And that's a mindset shift, right? Because a lot of people think, oh, there's nobody in my family that's ever invested anything that's worth more than $500,000. What gives me the right to go out and raise for or buy a $5 million property? And part of that is mindset. And that's a big learning lesson for me too. So I think the biggest things that I've learned is, where can you get money from? How do you talk to the different sources of money, and how do you structure those things? And the fact that mindset is a big part of it. even to the point where you can start your own fund if you've never done such a crazy thing, even though it's not that crazy, because I know regular schmoes that are, doing funds.
Okay. And thank you, man. I love it. So one thing too is, where do you your work ethic? I mean, one thing that I know, like when listening to you, is that you just have a wealth of knowledge. And I've had prior guests talk about how they have relentlessly looked at read books or things like that. How did you assume so much knowledge? Because I mean, you're so knowledgeable talking to your investors that sometimes you answer your own questions.
So they say, I can't remember who the owner of this quote is, but they say that like in order to become a master of something, you have to study it for 10,000 hours or something like that. And, coming up in this game, some people think that you have to become an underwriter in order to understand how to acquire deals. And other people kind of take the path of understanding that if they can learn how to raise capital, it's going to be a skill set that they can use to create necessity for them. So if you can learn how to raise $1 million, your skill set will always be in demand no matter what. And I understood this concept. So I was like, I'm just going to study capital raising until I master it. And the fastest way, and the reason that I've learned so much so quickly, is because I interview syndicators and ask them really detailed, intense questions about how they raised capital and in what situations it made sense for them to raise certain ways, because everybody raises differently. Some people use creative finance, some people use seller finance, some people use loans, some people use unique loan structures, some people raise from one person at a time, some people go after friends and family, some people leverage their network, some people use LinkedIn, some people build marketing campaigns, some people do ad campaigns. And I think what really got me to the point of learning so much about capital raising is that I started my own show on it, and I get to talk to people all day long about it. But what a lot of people do when they start podcasts is they interview like a cost segregation guy and a multifamily guy and like another lawyer or syndication attorney or somebody that has a unique specialty like insurance or property management or asset management or construction management or all these ancillary things that people that are becoming syndicators need to learn. That's very broad and expansive. I wanted to niche down. All I care about is the capital raising. So I studied with a bunch of capital raisers, and now in some cases, there's people that I interview that have raised $100 million and they have never started a fund. I know more about raising funds and creating funds and fund structures and getting business advice for funds than they do, because they've learned how to do marketing and they've done a lot of one-off syndications, but they don't know anything about how to start their own fund. And in some cases, I can actually provide them some input, say, hey, maybe I'm not the guy that's going to create your fund, but here's the dude that you need to talk to. This dude, this dude, this dude, it's Joel Block, Ike Mutabana, Lance Peterson. Or if you're going to talk to syndication attorneys, go talk to Nick McGrew, Nick Moore, Dugan Kelly, Kim Lisa Taylor. There's a ton of them, right? So like Merrill Callister and a bunch of other guys, Mauricio Raoul. But, I think for the process of learning one thing, you just got to talk to people, right? So I figured if I interview them on my show, they're going to spend more time with me talking to me and letting me pick their brain as we're sharing for the audience than they would if I just picked up a phone and called them. Sometimes you get pretty good response, but the majority of the time they're just like, hey, I'll give you 15 minutes. And that's how you get,
Right.
But that's it, man. That's the only trick, is just like spend a lot of time talking to people. And one of the greatest ways to do that is to start your own show, or just, like network like a madman, which is also recommendable.
Well, that's what I do. And I have
it's a good
this meetup
strategy
as well. Yeah. So one more question. I'm open up to the attendees to ask. One thing about you, man, is that you stand out because of your energy. And you're excitable, and I think that people gravitate towards you because of your energy, man.
I hope
So
so.
what where that came from. Have you always been like that, or is it something that you just excited about and you just love talking about what you love talking about?
So believe it or not, if you put me into a party where nobody is a real estate investor or a snowboarder, I start freaking out. Like I can't talk to people. I can't start conversation. I become very introverted. I go into the corner. I just kind of like go into my, looking into my phone, and I get very boring. But if you talk to me about something that I'm fascinated by, like capital raising or multifamily syndication or generational wealth, or like meeting people that are into the same thing, or snowboarding or traveling, like I start going off. Like it's just very excitable. So I would say that like I certainly have certain energy, good energy when it's something that I know, like, and love. And it's quite the opposite when like I try to be a bartender and they have to be all, like, what's going on with you today? And I can't do that. I can't talk to people that I have nothing in common with. So part of it is that I love what I talk about and what I do. And the other part, I guess, would be that like, it's part of, in your inherent responsibility, you have a moral imperative, because these fund managers and these syndicators, they're not like walking around and hanging out on every street corner. So it's our duty as podcast hosts, as syndicators, to tell people that they have another opportunity besides Wall Street, which is a crazy roller coaster ride, to get into deals, and that like everyday regular dudes can, and women and ladies can do it too. So I think this is some of the stuff that as investors we get excited about, and hopefully you can find a way to get excited about it if you don't have that inherently inside of you, so that you can share this, because it's really the main thing why my show is successful, is because it's fun. I can simplify things down into like a really easy, understandable nature, where you're talking from a very informal dude kind of personality. And I think people relate with that. So it's the energy comes from rock star energy and comes from my passion for what I do. Right. So I drank a rock star energy earlier today.
Oh, okay.
Coffee works good too, but sometimes it like clouds my brain, and I'm just like, I don't know if any of you guys have ever experienced it, where you drink a big coffee and then you get on video camera and you're just like, blah, 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 and then nothing makes sense that comes out of your mouth. So I recommend staying away from coffee unless you're tolerant to it, but I can't handle coffee. Rockstar is a little bit more manageable for me.
See, you give me some tips right there, man. Okay, now I see where it's coming from. It's the rock star. So when y'all see that higher energy, man, it's from the rock star. I got you.
The personal development coaches will always tell you that like the difference between people that are successful or not, or are passionate about things, is the management of your state, right? So how do you manage your state? If you are grumpy or you're in a bad mood, like what do you do to talk to your investors if you're in the middle of a capital raise? Well, if you're in a bad or cranky mood, like just stay off the phone, right? Like wait until the day is better and you didn't stub your toe out of bed or whatever. And then, drink a rock star and then get on the phone or get on a podcast, or, preferably like the best place I think to meet people is like networking events, something like this.
Yeah, true that. Definitely. So look, I'm gonna open up for the attendees to ask. I do have a big announcement that I'm gonna make at the end of the show. Huh? We say
awesome. I just said sweet, man. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a big announcement. It's an ask for everybody, but it's something that I really want to do. And then also I want to talk about at the end of the show. In 2 weeks, I have an open date, and I really want to have a subject matter kind of talk in 2 weeks, because I don't have a guest speaker for a reason. So who has a question for Mr. Ruben right here? Neil, Desmond, and you guys got go ahead, Desmond.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me, Aaron?
Yeah, matter of fact, Desmond, I'm gonna make you the co-host so you can let somebody in. So let me see. Go ahead, Desmond.
Ruben, thanks again. Very energetic. Love the conversation. One of the questions, two really. Setting up the fund. I know you were talking about there's key members, important people to have in the structure, architect, fund managers, and things like that, and a lawyer. What programs did you use in the beginning?
Dude, there are no programs. That's what makes fund management and learning about funds so challenging. That's one of the things that I love about, places, because dude, I've talked to like 12 or I don't know how many attorneys but they all say something different, you know, and I talk to these fund business advisors who are not even legal counsel. They're like business
Wow.
counsel. And
Okay.
they have a different opinion about the way funds need to be structured than the lawyers that they recommend you to talk to and even do business with do.
Wow.
So like to try and condense everything down, and then some lawyers know about, you know, everybody knows about blind pool funds, everybody knows about syndications, but some people don't know about deal by deal segregated funds. They don't know about pledge funds. They don't know about unusual structures. Like you can do any fund for any kind of investment, whether that's, you know, you can syndicate airplanes, high-rise buildings, casinos, hotels, baseball teams, movies, oil and gas. And they, you know, the syndicators, the attorneys, better said, the syndication attorneys will give you docs, the same docs for all of them, right?
Wow.
But they won't look at your business plan. They won't look at whether or not you understand how to structure it and pay your investors. And, you know, like what happens is, and this is what they told me too, in the beginning, I spoke to a business fund manager right off the bat, and I got really lucky for doing this because my old company had one. And he was telling me that like attorneys would, they they just don't know how to give you any business advice. So
Right.
what happens is the syndicators moving up into the syndication business, and they go and find a syndication attorney. The syndication attorney writes them docs similar to all of their other syndicator operator clients. And then about a year into it, you find yourself going, I wonder if I can do this in my syndication. And then you realize that you can't because it's not written into the docs because you didn't tell your lawyer to do it. So this is why you need a business fund advisor to tell you, this is what you need to tell your attorney to put in place. So like, instead of, you think that all you need to do is go talk to an attorney and the attorney will handle everything for you. But what they can't do is give you the business advice and tell you how to structure it. So now instead of just paying 15 grand, or, you know, if you're lucky, you can find one for 7 grand or maybe even less. I know syndication attorneys that charge less, but you know, like, how do you tell them what to put in the docs? And like, if you've never syndicated anything, well, you don't even know. So that's why you need to pay an advisor. And most people don't even know that these advisors exist. Once again, I'll name off like some of the ones that I really like. Joel Block. He can be found at bullseyecap.com or syndicatefast.com if you want to get
That was
into
Joel.
Yeah, Joel Block, JoelBlock. There's Lance Peterson. I believe he's in the process of transitioning from one company to another. And then there's Ike Mutabana, who's a very spiritual dude who's run like 5 funds, and he's done a bunch of different things. I had him on my show, and he explained one thing about funds, which is very interesting, because we were using funds to bring capital into the funds, and then we would stroke an LP check, limited partner check, into somebody else's deal. And he's like, yeah, that's a great strategy, but did you know that you can actually, the fund can be an owner of the deal, and you can bring your capital and then invest side by side with these guys. So you own part of the company that owns this LLC, or better said, yeah. So apartment complex, maybe an LLC that owns it, and then you can invest side by side with another operator that's also raising capital and being a general partner for that deal. And I was like, well, that's an interesting thing. So these guys, they turn you on to a new concept. They've done things. They've talked to different lawyers. And this is the hardest part, is like, you can't just talk to one attorney and expect them to give you all the right advice. You have to talk to like 10 attorneys. And then on top of that, you have to talk to the business advisor. So those are the biggest parts of creating a fund that I've learned. And you can use the fund to do even more stuff. Like you can create a debt fund, you can create a hard money fund.
What do you do sometimes if there's unused funds? They don't get calculated for, let's say, in percentages until it's invested, or you can put that in the operating agreement. Like today is February 17th, so it would start maybe March or April or something like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have that question because they think people are just going to put money into a fund even though it's not earning interest. They're not. They're going to say, hey man, I'll give you a soft commit when your next deal comes up. Count me in for $100,000. And that's just a soft commit. And in some cases, you can even structure it so that you can't even soft commit unless once the deal shows up, they are legally on the hook to get in, which I don't recommend doing. But Some people have success doing it that way, but these are the things that you need to think about.
Right.
But the money will never be just sitting in there. And if it is, you're probably having to pay interest on it. And if they're not in a deal, that money is coming out of your operations in your own pocket as a company or as a person.
Mhm. Thank you.
Right. Cause like, here's the thing is that a lot of people, like particularly general contractors, they're just like on one side of it, right? General contractors are building these subdivisions or these large apartment complexes, 4 stories, 180 units or whatever. And they're seeing what the syndicators are making. And they're calling me saying, hey, you're the capital raiser. If you can give me money, I'm a general contractor. I can make you money. I can be this. I can, all I need is a few $1 million from you. And I'm like, I ain't got
Wow.
no few $1 million for you, dude. Like, I don't know why you guys think that, like, if you're in Pakistan and are raising for a golf course development, that all of a sudden I can just throw you a check. Like, I'm trying to raise for my own deals, but like people have this misconception that if they start a fund, the money will just be sitting there like, beautiful baby princess ready to deploy capital. It's not like that at all. Like, you have to work really hard to get the money in there. And then if it eventually goes in there, you better be ready to deploy it immediately,
Right.
because otherwise you're paying interest. Now you can set up your fund, or you can, better said, you can set up your investors and let them know, hey, we got this fund. It's going to be doing these many deals in this particular asset class. If like and trust me, can I count you in for 100,000? And they'll be saying like, oh yeah, Ruben, dude, I like investing with you, man. Count me in. And that's the kind of feedback that you want to get from your investors before you even start a fund. Because you start a fund and then you try and go to your investors and say, hey, can I count you in for this? And they're like, wait, what's your business model? And they don't know anything about you.
Right.
That's like,
Anybody else have
not
questions? I'm sorry, I don't want to hold
that's
up.
cool, man.
Neil, Abigail, Cinto, Chantel.
Oh, that was great, Desmond. I just love listening to Ruben riff, so that was all
Yeah,
good.
that
But
was-
but yeah,
Neat.
I did have a question.
Shoot.
Yeah, Neil.
Yeah, so I like what you said about the mindset, because it was kind of always like, I don't really like asking for money, right? And it's like I had to get over that. But the way I kind of see it and got over it is that it's not really asking for money. I have the knowledge and experience that other people that have the money don't, and so I'm really actually asking to help them with their money. And that's kind of a big shift that happened for me, and where I see capital raising and coming in on that respect. So I just thought that was something nice to share, because I see a lot of syndicators having trouble with deals right now, and it's like, how are some of these really high level syndicators having trouble raising capital? So I really agree with a lot of what Ruben's saying and raising capital. But Ruben, the question I had was, what did your infrastructure look like when you were starting and setting up? Like, did you have a website and use marketing? What were you going after, and like how much you raised? Like, what? Because I'm in the process of building out my business right now and building out the site and marketing and stuff like that. So I was just kind of trying to pick your brain a little bit about what you're doing or what you did.
At what point in my history are you talking about?
Probably when you went on your own, right? Because you were saying that you were working for someone. You wanted
so
them to.
I used to work for a company called Bakerson, and if you go to bakerson.com, you'll see that they're going to have a bunch of buildings on there. It's going to be a generic website. And, I kept on telling them, hey, we need to rebrand this thing. So number one, like if you go to bakerson.com, or if the audience, not even you guys, but if like the world is trying to figure out what bakerson.com does, they're probably thinking these guys cook bread and stuff. They're not thinking these guys are an investment firm. So part of the branding is like, does your name of your website explain what it is that you're doing? And if not, does the first thing that they see when they go onto your website explain what you're doing? This is a story brand by Donald Miller kind of philosophy, where if you can explain exactly what you're doing, where a kindergartner or a young person can come to your website and know, oh, this dude invests in multifamily, or this dude helps people create generational wealth. Because I would even say like go that route, right? So because all these syndicators that I talk to and I go to their websites and I see their webinars, they're taking hypotheticals. They got buildings, market analysis, team, blah, blah, blah. It's all about them and what they're doing. It's never about what the investor wants. What is the emotional need of the investor? Are they there because they need to get their daughter into college? Are they there because they want to have time freedom or get out of their W-2? Like, what kind of pictures do you have on your marketing? Is it pictures of beaches and hanging out with your family, or is it pictures of buildings? I can tell you, no investor is ever going to want to invest in anything because they love buildings. They're going to do investing because it gets them something that satisfies an emotional need. So we've been really kind of dialing in and honing in on emotional based marketing. And I would recommend, like, look into Donald Miller's story brand, where, you know, the hero is not you, the hero is the investor. You're just the guide that takes, you know, like, let's talk about story brand a little bit. So story brand is when, let's just say in a movie, you have, hopefully you guys know Star Wars.
Oh, my favorite.
So Luke Skywalker is the hero. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda, they're not the heroes, they're the guides. And then so the hero has to be prompted by the guide to go face their demon, which in this case is, or their evil, whatever, in this case is Darth Vader. But in the syndication world, it's like the emotional problem. It's it, you know, I don't have passive income, or I have major tax problems. So we guide them to confront those things and then challenge them to take them on. And then at the end of the day, the hero ends up getting the thing that they want, which in most cases is generational wealth or whatever that individual's problem is. This is a whole different version of branding than what most indicators do. And it's been a very effective strategy for telling stories and getting people very interested in what you're doing. This particular format has been used to pass stories down along generations for thousands of years. So it's very effective today, you know, versus like selling buildings. So you take the hero and you guide them to get them what they want. And this is the exact thing, same thing that you want to do when you're in a conversation with these guys. You mentioned earlier, Neil, like that your mind shift changed a little bit. And this is one of the, Aaron asked earlier, what is it that you've learned the most? I had Todd Dexheimer come on my show, and I'm like, I told him, I asked him straight up, I'm like, how do you raise capital? He's like, dude, that's the wrong question. You don't raise capital because that's a self-centered question. What you do is you educate and provide opportunities for people that would otherwise not have them. And then, you know, like, so that doesn't solve the situation. If you're in a high pressure situation like I was, where my team was all like, hey, dude, you're the capital raiser, go raise the money. Well, that's a very stressful thing. And when you're talking to people, they feel it. They know that you're trying to sell them. So what I've learned about capital raising, most importantly, I think from this perspective and what we're talking about right now, is that you don't sell your whatever it is that you're selling. In our case, syndication. You just basically provide information, and hopefully you can create a platform that nurtures and educate people. And then you let people self-select whether or not they want to do business with you. If you're coming at them or you're asking me, Ruben, how do you raise capital? I got this dude that's got $300,000 and he wants to invest. How do I sell him? Dude, that's the wrong question. Like, all what you want to do is you want to ask them, what is it that they're trying to accomplish, and then make friends. And then if you can make really good friends with people, friends tend to want to do business with people that they consider friends. So the more friends that you can make, the better your opportunities are for raising capital. I mean, if you want to put it that way. Some people don't, they hate using that terminology. Syndication attorneys hate using the terminology raising capital. And even some people are just like, I attract capital, or I'm a presenter of opportunities. I don't want to use what you say. I don't want to go on the Capital Raiser show because I don't want my audience to think that I'm trying to sell them, because there's so much negative connotation in the market, and people think that capital raisers have a bad name because they're salesmen. We're not. We're educators. Really, that's what we are. So this is a big mindset shift for the beginning capital raiser that they need to go through. I think the way I did is realize that it's not about selling or, you know, having all of the answers before you talk to them. It's about reaching out to them, asking them what it is that they're trying to accomplish, and then seeing if there's a match for what they want to accomplish with your product, which in our case is multifamily apartment complexes. In a lot of cases, you can solve some of their problems. But I think the problem is, and I hear this too, it's just like, they're like, I don't like multifamily syndicators because you have one product and you're trying to shove it down people's throats. And, you know, like I thought about them, like, wow, like we really do only have one product. They say, like, if you go to a doctor and you have a cough and they're like, oh, we're going to perform surgery, you're just like, wait, I don't want surgery, you know, like, but they're only offering you one solution, which is to cut you open and to do exploratory surgery into your lungs when you're coughing. You got to find something that makes sense for them. So you got to be subtle about the way you present your project. And in some cases, what your medicine is not what they're looking for. And you got to be okay with that, because another perspective is like raising capital is very similar to a waiter that's serving coffee. You go around, say, hey, you want some coffee? Some people will be like, no, I'm getting ready to leave. So does that offend you? No, typically you're just like, hey, I got this thick pot of coffee. I'm gonna go around and check to see who wants it. Next person says, no, I'm good. And the next person says, yeah, I'll take some. So you pour them. It's the same thing with syndication, man. You just go around and hopefully you have a platform to get in front of as many people as possible. And then hopefully enough people, if your platform is good, or if your networking skills are good, or if your communication skills are good, eventually you'll make enough contacts where people will want to do business with you, whether as a capital raiser partner or as a limited partner in your deals. That's fun, man. That's a good conversation. I'm glad that I got to share that. Who else has got a question or a comment?
Yeah.
Or a joke?
I did have another one if no one's going to go.
Dude.
Yeah, Neil, go ahead.
Would there be any benefit or you know, earlier rather than later of getting an RIA, a Series 65, to add to your credibility?
Oh, I thought you were talking about go seek RIAs who have access to partners or people that are rich so that you can put those rich people into your deals. So one of my strategies, or I should say my team strategy, is to reach out to RIAs and then get those guys to get access to their investors who they manage their money for. These RIAs, by the way, get paid directly by the people that have money to manage their money. So these RIAs don't become co-GPs or partners in your funds or participate in any of the acquisition fees or any of that. They just, you know, if you can make friends with enough of them, they bring their investors or the people that they're connected with to you. Now, if you're talking about RIAs the way that I'm thinking, it's almost the same question it's almost the same situation as two situations, which is, should I get a broker dealer's license so that I can legally be compliant and held to a certain stringent and have the ability to legally raise capital without participating in deals? And if that's what you want to do, I would say, no, it's not necessary. Just go out and start a fund. But that requires a little bit of education on funds. The same kind of concept happens in the single family game, where you have these wholesalers and these little kind of investors that are like, do I need to get a real estate agent's license in order to become an investor? And the wholesalers will always say no. Well, the fund manager is the same thing, like on a bigger scale, will always say no. You don't need to get your RIA, designation. You don't need to get a broker dealer's license. The other thing that's kind of a hindrance with the broker dealer's license is there's not a lot of broker dealers. When you get your license, you have to hang your license with the broker dealer. And there's not a lot of broker dealers that mess around with multifamily or real estate. They're like trying to sell mutual funds or real estate investment trusts or other things. So before you get that, you need to be able to find out that the broker is going to let you raise capital for multifamily. And then I know one dude that got his broker dealer license, and then afterwards his broker said, okay, great, you can sell multifamily, but you can only sell my multifamily. So he was coming across a lot of deal flow, and he no longer was able to raise capital for anybody else that his broker didn't approve of, because the broker was going to make money from certain people and not from these other syndicators and sponsors that are out in the world. So, I mean, my personal preference and the idea behind getting a broker dealer's license is you don't need it. And not to mention, the regulators are going to scrutinize you at a much higher level and then hold you accountable to much higher things, which is not necessary. If you really want to raise capital legally for other sponsors, the way to do it is through a fund, which is one of the things that I learned from my show.
Great. Good one.
Awesome.
Good one. Good one. Good one. Anybody else? Anybody else? Since you don't have anything, or go ahead, Desmond. I see you want to say
I
something.
was gonna ask Ruben, when you did the first capital raise, was it in an existing account or you opened up a new LLC?
So you're talking about back in the fourplex days?
Right.
So we would just start an LLC, and then the LLC would be owned by the people that operated the building. And then it would also be owned by the capital partners. So like the lawyer typically would say, hey, what are you going to contribute? Oh, well, I'm going to contribute property management, the acquisition, the putting it under contract side. And then, you know, the other person says, well, I'm going to bring the capital, but they have to do more than that. Even in a JV, even if it's not a syndication, all joint ventures, which is an important topic. There's a lot of fourplex investors and small real estate investors. They only have like 2 or 3 partners in an LLC that they create with no lawyer. And then one person is completely passive. And typically a regulator is not going to give a damn. They're not going to chase you down for like a $500,000 investment. But as soon as one person becomes passive, in other words, they don't have any ongoing duties or decision-making or board of advisory kind of things. Once there's at least one person that becomes passive, that's legally a syndication. And for people that are scaling that want to become capital raisers, you want to start doing things by the right habits within legal structures and legal ways right off the bat. And a lot of people don't like to do things that way because it costs money to get a lawyer. You can go down to the city council or whatever, you know, state administrator, and get an LLC set up and just do it yourself for like $85 in some states, or a few $100 wherever you are in the country. So why talk to an attorney that's going to charge you $3,000 or $4,000? Well, it's because they can save your ass. And typically, here's another thing that I was talking about with a lawyer just a couple of days ago. He was telling me that like when the regulators come crashing down on you, typically they're not going to send you to jail, but what they're going to do is they're going to prevent you from legally being able to raise capital for periods of time, whether it's 1, 3, 5, 10 years, or depending on the severity of your fraudulent activities or your misconduct, they could take it away forever. And for me, like, that's why when I'm vetting operators, I really want to make sure that they're doing things legit. And, you know, even when I'm talking on my show, I don't want to say and missay things that are not in congruency with the regulators, things that they require. So I study it, but at the same time, I'm not trying to teach. So I'm just like, hey, I'm just here to learn, you know, what is it like if this happens? If I'm a fourplex investor and I bring a guy and he doesn't have any duties, what happens to me? Do I go to jail for that? Do I lose my license? Or do I lose something? And they're like, oh, typically they don't really, the regulator's not going to beat you up too much about it for a smaller deal. But as soon as you start getting into the $1 million deals, then, you know, like, that's where all the Bernie Madoff securities have been put in place to protect investors. And you just got to keep mind, you know, be present of mind that this is a reality, that you have to do things by the book and you can't condition the market. And if you have a 506B, you can't advertise and all that stuff.
Senso asks, what is your favorite failure?
Favorite failure. What does that mean? Favorite like the biggest learning lesson, or favorite, you know, what does that mean?
He said, yeah, I guess your favorite learning lesson.
Well, so I don't know. I can't think of the favorite one. I can tell you the worst one.
He said biggest learning lesson.
The biggest learning lesson for me, I think the most important learning lesson for me was that you need to, when you're transitioning from joint venture or small capital people to syndication, is that these investors, these limited partners, they require a great deal more communication than the other partners. They need like to hear from you and get a like a monthly newsletter, and be able to log into your portal and see what's going on with their deal. Because like, I think the biggest problem for like single family investors that are transitioning into multifamily is that these single family guys, especially if they're flipping or doing wholesales, they get into a deal, they raise the money for the deal, and then they're out of the deal 30 to 60 to 90 days later. And then they don't really need to communicate with their investors during that time frame, because by the time the deal is over, here's your check, boom, let's do it over again. When you move into syndication, if you're of this mindset, you can't do that anymore. If you're going 6 months or a year without communicating with your investors are freaking out because they've given you their nest egg or a portion of their nest egg, and they need to be really handheld and understand exactly what's going on with the deal, whether it's bad or good, but you can't just leave them hanging without any information. So having access to people's phone calls, to their phone numbers, better said, and being able to reach out to them and communicate with them and let them know what's going on with their deals and with their deals and with their money is incredibly important once you move into syndication. That's the most powerful thing that I've learned. And it seems like it's not that really big of a deal, but it comes with all this stuff, right? So now you have to create automation, CRMs, have a monthly newsletter. So you have to be a content creator. And in some cases, you have to deal with the property managers and the construction managers and know exactly what's going on and get reports from them and then give that back to your investors, knowing that the majority of them are not even going to open the email, right? So it's kind of frustrating that you have to do all this work, but the investors expect it once you move into syndication. So it's that infrastructure, having a portal, the CRM, the automations, the active campaign, all of that stuff is just, it's the most important part when, like the good syndicators have this really dialed in. And on top of that, they do really good, nice things for their investors, like send them gifts, like, I don't know, a book or something that makes them feel like, or take them out to dinner, or, at the end of the year or after something is closed, if there a lot of your investors are in one city, take them to the top of the high-rise building and let them have a big party. Like the really good syndicators are very good at communicating, and they're also very good at making their investors feel appreciated. And part of that is like gift giving and like being responsive and stuff like that. But let's see, real quick, the biggest failure that I ever had, dude, right when I was transitioning from small multis, we had this one dude. I had a couple of wholesalers in my network, and one dude came to me, is like, hey man, like I see you're having success, let's go do a deal together. And blindly he invested with me, and blindly I picked one of my wholesalers who had done like 7 flips in a row and had like crushed it on each of them. And then we bought a property in a bad part of town, didn't put a fence around it, started rehabbing it, and then left one day just to go home. And when we came back the next day, like some vandal had broken in, destroyed the air conditioner, destroyed all the rehab that we had put in, and the insurance that we had in place did not cover non-owner occupied, or so if there was no resident or owner living in there, it was not going to cover it. So we lost like $40,000 on that deal. I was back in 2008. That was a big learning lesson. And the partners that I had, they wanted to kill me. They wanted to beat me up. And even though it wasn't my fault, but that's what happens. And that was a big learning lesson. Like, so number one, if you're going to do single family flips, like have an insurance product that will cover you, even if there's no resident in there, which is uncommon to find. You can't find those, but that was a huge, huge lesson. And I still feel guilty, even though it wasn't my fault. Like we lost money on that. That's the only one that I've ever really lost a ton of money on. And we couldn't do anything about it, So I don't know what certificate of insurance product is. I left that space a long time ago. Oh, you're going through that right now? Yeah. Talk to an insurance specialist that covers non-occupied homes. They're harder to find. I don't know if they're probably a little more expensive, but if you're in that space, definitely recommend that, because so you don't have to go through that crappy headache that I had to deal with. That was like, man, 14 years ago. I still remember it. Chantel, Robert, Abigail, any questions, comments, concerns, jokes, anything that you want to chat about, even if it's just banter back and forth?
Hey, I'm actually Aaron's cousin. So it's like my first time joining in. By the way, you guys did a great job and
Thanks.
explaining anything that people have questions about. I'm a newbie. All this sounds like Chinese to me.
Right. And it's always like that the first time.
So
One thing that I learned, like if you're in a space where you're learning about real estate investing, and like my wife is, for example, she was born in Mexico, and she's been married to me 3 years. She doesn't know a damn thing about real estate. She's just like, oh, my husband's a syndicator, and that's all that she knows. But just like the process is for real estate investors to learn the language of real estate, whether you're a real estate agent or an investor, it's a whole new language. Same thing happens with the syndicators. For the guys that are in here that are a little bit more advanced, when you're starting to learn about funds, it starts to become another whole new language or a sub niche of a real estate language. But it's not necessarily easy to learn, but anybody can learn it if they just put some time into it, just like you can with any other language. I guarantee you, like if you guys went to a French 101 in a college class and were in there for an hour a day, 5 days a week for a full semester, by the end of that semester, you would be able to have a fluent conversation in French. And it's no different with like the language of real estate or the language of funds.
right. I do like what you said about not really selling to people, but to make an opportunity, for investors to see what their goals are or what they're actually interested in or what they want to accomplish. So that I got, and it stuck with me. So everything else
Awesome.
I was just jotting down so I could just read up on later.
You know what? Another place where a lot of people get caught up on, even me, when I came on board with my old company, Bakerson, is like I felt like I had to know every single little detail about the syndication deal before I could ever talk to anybody about it. And really what my focus should have been on is, hey, I trust the people that I'm working with, and my job is to go make friends. And if my friends show interest and I don't know the answers, hey, we got a couple team members, somebody that wants to know about the underwriting, let me send you over to the acquisitions director. Somebody that wants to know about what's the future of our deals, let me send you to the visionary and CEO. Somebody wants to know about, whatever, you send him the construction guy, let me get you in contact with them. They all have the answers. I don't necessarily have to have the answers. My job is just to make friends. And
Right.
I think that paralyzes a lot of people. Like, I can't talk to any investor until I know every single detail. And by the time you know every detail, the money's already raised and the deal's closed, So
Mhm.
I would invite you to not be paralyzed by not having all the information necessary in order to talk to people about your deal and your friend or sponsor or partner's deal.
Okay. Well, thank you. It's
Yep.
been very informative, and I appreciate it. And thanks,
welcome.
Aaron, for sharing the link and everything.
Anytime, cuz. Definitely want to talk. I want you to be on that right path.
All right.
One day you'll be like me. I'm gonna be a guest speaker on Capital Rager show. So I'm very,
It's
very
not
excited.
that big of a deal to come on my show, man.
Yeah, it is to me. It is to me. You know what I'm saying? It is to me. So, all right. Is there any more questions before we get to this last part of this meetup? Before we,
I don't have a question, but I just want to say, a takeaway that's very valuable for me is that I'm not a capital raiser by any means, but I do work with a lot of them. And the one thing that I like that you said is that, you attract, you attract investors, you don't really look for them. And I love that, because I think you're absolutely right. Like, sometimes people think we're too salesy, and that can, just attract people, but you're absolutely right. People buy from people. And I think if you walk away from this conversation, is relationships will networking relationships, building friendships, and having the money come to you instead of always looking for the money. I really like that. So that was just my takeaway. So I just wanted to share my takeaway.
That's a huge takeaway. That it's a very unfortunate that a lot of people on their podcast, they don't talk about the golden rule and being of congruency with yourself and with God and the spiritual side of it. Because if you're hoodwinking people or doing stuff or beating yourself up or eating the wrong things in some cases at detrimental levels or hurting yourself or your loved ones like you start to lose that alignment with yourself and your own confidence in yourself and with your own relationships, which is it affects the way that you interact with people. It really does. And a lot of people don't talk about the mindset or the spiritual part. It's really important to be of congruency when you're in this business, even when people are not looking, when you're not in church, when you're at home, when you're by yourself, even like do things that are good for you and for other people and be of abundance. And that will let you attract people into your life. But that's something that nobody ever talks about.
I do want to say this too about one thing about Ruben is he always talk about spirituality and mindset too. So that's one thing I love about his show too. Is he always has a a mindset and a spirituality, because that's really pushes him a lot in his life is spirituality. And man, if you guys want to ever listen to him about his travels. If you want to hear some good stories, listen to him about his travels, man. You'll hear some great stories over the course of time. I think Neil can probably agree with me, man. When you hear about his traveling, he has some great stories.
Yeah, I wanted to add Ruben, thanks for sharing all these wisdom that you're sharing with the group here. I get involved on the lending side, but I did get involved with my first syndication as an LP. So just like a month ago or so. So I'm just trying to feel all that out. How
that's a great tool, man. Congratulations, number one. And number two, like when you invest passively in somebody's deal, you get to lift the curtain up, see how they communicate with people, and then see things that you like and don't like, which is going to help you if you ever go into capital raising or just syndicating in general. So congratulations, that's awesome.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay. So, go ahead, Ruben.
Sino had a question. I think he wanted to know if I had any more tips on working on your first flip. If you want, tell me a little bit about your flip. Maybe I'll have a better understanding of what might be in my repertoire that could assist you. I can't just give random advice on flips. It's been a long time since I spent time in that category.
He can't talk right now. His voice is gone, so he's going to have to just put it in the chat. That's why he's been sending that stuff to you.
So,
but look, while he's doing that, Ruben, let me just say this too, and then we can go to that. We can probably go that offline when I record. But I just want to say this too, guys. In 2 weeks' time frame, we have an open date, and we're going to talk. We're going to have a mindset, goal strategy meetup where anybody's welcome to talk about, are they accomplishing their first quarter goals? Are they moving forward? And anybody needs some help, and then just have a all. Basically, everybody can just chime in and talk, and I'm really going to try to promote as much as possible. And then number two is I saw an email today that got me pumped up, Ruben. So Old Capital is having a basketball tournament, and it's March 26th. It's Saturday, March 26th is in Dallas, and I'm thinking about putting a team together.
I don't know how to play basketball, dude.
Well, I understand that, Ruben. I understand that, but I'm looking for some serious. I'm gonna start looking for some serious hoopers because I want to win this thing. And the great thing about it is it's competition, but also this is only for multifamily investors. This ain't for any Joe Schmo on the street. It's only for multifamily investors. So if you guys know anybody who hoops, who are serious hoopers, maybe play some college ball, professional ball, something like that, please contact me, because I definitely I don't want to hold my team down. And what I mean, I want to score all the points. That's not cool. I'm not at age anymore to be doing that. You know what I'm saying? So I need some help. I don't want to just I don't want to go there and just get blown out. You might gotta do that. You might gotta do that, Senso. You might gotta do all things. Number that might be a great thing, but
because is it co-ed?
I don't know. It probably is. Yeah, I've seen women on here.
Where's it going to be at?
It's going to be at SMU Venture Center. So it's going to be at SMU.
And you're speaking Chinese to me. I don't know where that is.
That's in Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's going to be basically, playing back. You're playing for the homeless. So it's called Hoops for Homelessness. And
nice.
Like I said, it's March 26th. And so I might try to find me an All In Homes team and go down and compete, network, and get some connections and win this whole thing. So I'll put the money up for the team, for the entry fee, and we can find some people that, hey, I might gotta look at their resume a little bit, you know what I'm saying, Robert? I don't want no guys say I play ball and they're a weekend warrior. I don't want to play with weekend warriors.
I don't play a lot of ball anymore, but if this was a tennis tournament, I'll be the first one there.
Yeah, man. Put together a
That is
snowboard
my
team
dream.
and I'll be there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get on the ice, Aaron, and I'll be there.
I feel you. But you might always come in for networking part too. That's the whole part of it, is the networking part. I mean, you're helping for a cause. So, but I don't want to travel all the way from Washington to Texas and get blown out the first couple games. You know what I'm saying? So
Now, I
yeah.
haven't seen Julie in such a long time.
Yeah.
Capital with Julie.
Yeah. I know she'll be there. That'd be great to see her too. So
Yeah,
I don't know. Chantel, we might put this on social media. We gotta put this on social media, make it like a little, make a little video or something like that. But I'm carrying on. So look.
We could get our boys to play. We'll get our sons to play. My husband is a very good basketball player, but we're Canadian and we don't invest in multifamily. So, but he would probably go down. We could go down. I have lots of clowns, lots of clients in Dallas.
We'll talk. Yeah, we'll definitely talk. All right. So look, guys, thank you, Ruben, so much, man. It's been a pleasure having you on here. Also, I want to say that we are affiliate of GOB Network. They're having a conference in June in Chicago. It's gonna be like a weekend affair. So check out the GOB Network. Should be a great time. Also, this is the final announcement. I just see from my state of Washington that we are lifting the indoor mask mandate in March. So I'm gonna try to set up a date either in April or May to have a dinner series in Seattle. So I'm gonna invite all the big time Seattle investors, and whoever else want to come, they can come. So just gonna put that out there. So just like my main man Lawrence Ladd, he got his in Miami, and every place I'm gonna have one here in Seattle. So anybody's welcome to come. All right, guys, thank you so much. God bless you, and
awesome.
see you next week.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Ruben.